Welcome, Andre. We really appreciate your leadership and taking the time to be here for this interview today.
Thank you. Glad to be here.
Great. As always, we like to begin all things by acknowledging the original stewards of the various lands that we are on, as well as our ancestors and those who toiled without compassion or compensation. We like to acknowledge our elders and all the community stewards whose shoulders we continue to stand on as we build and share and learn together for our collective liberation. And now I'd like for you to take the time to just, introduce yourself to our viewers and listeners and let us know the work that you do.
Yeah, thank you for that blessed opening. As always, I appreciate the vibes at Setsi and kind of setting the tone for how we, relate to each other and understand each other. And so in that spirit, I'm trying to understand myself. And so I call myself Andre Pavin Vashist. I would greet you hello, bonjour, and namaste, the languages of my parents and the language that I was taught in. I was born and raised in Scarborough, in Takaranto, and in, this land that we call Turtle Island, so-called Canada. And I'm learning about my relationship with this place through not only my ancestors, but through my children. So I have two sons, and we currently live in London, Ontario. And I work in the nonprofit sector my whole life, since I was 15 years old. My first job at the YMCA at Scarborough, and 20 plus years in the nonprofit sector has led me to work kind of in different spaces. So I currently work at Philanthropic Foundations of Canada as a director of learning and collaboration. I'm on the board of a credit union called Libro Credit Union, and I advise with an environmental network on conservation finance. And so I have hats in many places. I wouldn't say I'm employed by one organization, but I'm probably employed by my family. And then, and then I got to do the work in the community.
I love that. So speaking of, different brands and, work for yourself, can you share what your personal mission and vision is?
Yeah, actually, it's interesting. I was recently at like a gathering of some folks and talking about our journey within this sector, and I had to find a way to communicate what do I care about. There's so many things, there's so many issues in this world, but I can only work on so many. And I've kind of landed on kind of three R's. One was around redistribution, and that's not only a redistribution of money, but a power, that whole concept of equity, but how do we redistribute all the resources that we have, in this world, and make it more fair for everyone. So that's a really important one for me. That's why I like the cooperative movement, like the credit unions and nonprofit sector and all that kind of stuff. The other one, and I was on a call today actually where someone challenged me on this word, so I need to rethink it, but reconciliation. As someone who grew up in this land, did not know a lot about the history and has been recently learning about that. And I've always remember reading Nelson Mandela's autobiography, and in that book, he talks about contacting folks here, he's in South Africa working through apartheid. He's contacting people in Canada. I'm like, hold on, they're calling us? And it was a shift in my mind, okay, we have some issues here, and so there's some deep rooted issues, not just with indigenous folks, but with a lot of communities here. A lot of the diasporas have come to this land not by choice. And so I think that's something I'm trying to understand and work through. My father's from India, but he came here by choice. And so I'm trying to understand that journey. And then the last one is regeneration. And so the trees in the background, they're not real, but it's really about how do we care for this land? Because at the end of the day, it's the earth that gives us life every day. And it's not just the humans that give us, we are beholden to this earth. And so I want to take care of it. And so those are kind of the three R's that kind of are my moral compass right now and how I guide myself in this journey.
I like that. It definitely speaks to your passions and what's important to you. So can you share how important research and innovation is in the work that you do?
Yeah, I'm probably more I'm an experiential learner. So my research comes through living in the world, of experiencing life. And so I do appreciate research that goes out and collects data and puts it in reports. And I do appreciate that work because it's about gathering information, making it something that's digestible and actionable for our community. So I really appreciate that. But I also think research is also something that needs to be lived. You have to go out and live in certain scenarios or certain communities or collaborate with certain people in order to experience what life is like in a place that you're trying to understand, right? And so for me, working on conservation finance, having to work with Indigenous leaders around me in the community, I've had to learn how to be like in different spaces and have different people facilitate those spaces and like just change the way I interact with those concepts, right? And that I may have been able to read a book like Braiding Sweetgrass, which is a beautiful book and teaches me a lot, but it didn't teach me what I needed in some ways, how to act in real life, how to embody some of those learnings. So that's where research really means to me. And then innovation is really about changing something, right? And so, you know, I've been taught change comes on a personal level, change comes on a kind of maybe a familial level, organizational level, societal level, you know. And so for me, innovation, I've typically worked on the personal side of transformation, working with other people who want to change themselves. I work with organizations. I try to work at the community level, but social innovation, whoo, you know, that's like, you know, everyone wants to affect society, and what I realized, no individual does it, right? So the beauty of social innovation or innovation is like collaboration. That's where I find a lot of my passion, is like finding people that I can work with, or finding people that we don't agree with, and we try to find ways to work with. And sometimes it breaks apart, and sometimes it creates something magical, and that's just the journey we're on.
Absolutely. And I mean, it makes a lot of sense to consider all that. Like you said, with collaboration is huge. So on a personal level, what inspires you most about the work that you do?
Well, I mean, in the backdrop, I have a new baby who's in there, and you know, is being taken care of by his mom. So I think, you know, obviously a lot of us who have children or have younger generations in our lives were inspired by, you know, wanting to do better for them. That's like an age-old thing that we all humans kind of somewhat experience. And so that's going to be part of my journey. I talked about also, like, you know, looking at my ancestors. So like my mother's family are colonial, they come from colonial past. My dad's family comes from being in India, being colonized by the British. Like there's like a lot of these histories that affect who I am. And so part of me, I don't know what it is, but my parents maybe raised me in a way to like care for people. And I grew up in the nonprofit sector at a young age, kind of having been supported by the nonprofit sector. So they cared for me. And so now I always kind of constantly feel the sense of like wanting to like care for my community, because I feel like it's the right thing to do. And so I think what inspires me is just that innate feeling of like just always wanting to try and do better for the world and better for myself, and acknowledging that I'm an imperfect being, acknowledging that we're never going to fix everything, and it's more than a single generation's commitment to this work. So I think the inspiration just comes from, you know, waking up every morning, honestly, and seeing the sun rise and saying Surya Namaskar, which means like saluting the sun, which I try to do every morning, and saying thank you for this gift of life, and how do I appreciate it? How do I give gratitude for it? And what am I going to do today with that gift? And I don't always do the greatest things. Sometimes I do wonderful things, and you know, every day is a new opportunity. So that's my inspiration to some degree.
Well, that's definitely an honest answer. And what challenges or barriers do you face in your work, and what are you doing to overcome them?
You know, I was just, you know, on a call, and many calls today and every day. And I think it's like collaboration is not easy. Like I love collaboration, but I sometimes like it's the most frustrating thing to do, whether it be collaborating with your family, collaborating with your community, collaborating, you know, it's like it's hard to be in relationship with others, even when we all have the best intentions, even when we all are like want the right things to happen. We all have our own ways of doing, our own perspectives on how to get there, and then we clash. Right. And I think that clash, whether it be like the way we talk, whether it be the assumptions that we have of each other, whether it be like the experiences that we have, like are bringing to the table, not jiving totally, and we don't have the time to make the relationships either, because we're constantly on virtual calls, or we don't know each other well, or, you know, whatever it is, right? Or we don't have the resources to do the things we want to do and just end up going somewhere else. Like the challenges are just trying to keep enough people working on the same thing for a certain amount of time that we can actually make some change, right? And that's one of the reasons why, and I mean, Setsi, I've loved what Setsi has done, because it's constantly mobilizing communities, and that's why I've joined a lot of these organizations that I'm with, because they're networks. Well, I want to be in spaces where we can cultivate relationships meaningful relationships for a long enough period that some change can happen. It can have a ripple effect, or we can all get connected, like at a policy level, at a programmatic level, at an individual level. So the challenges are just getting along, and then and then getting on with it after we figured out how much we can get along. And one of the things that I've been trying to teach myself for many years is like listening to understand, having patience, having grace, but balancing that with like having bravery and courage to speak when things need to be said. And then within those two worlds, understanding what I have to take responsibility for and how I can also keep other people accountable, and people can keep me accountable. So then the nuance of that whole thing I just described is like accountability is not always easy. Keeping each other accountable to what we say and what we commit to, it's not easy, because accountability requires the truest innovation. It requires us to really shift something in ourselves. Like say, okay, I want to redistribute my wealth. Well, how much did I redistribute of my own wealth this year? Who's keeping me accountable to that, right? If I want to regenerate the land, well, how many plants did I plant this year? Who's going to keep me accountable to that, right? Like these are the real hard conversations and are really sensitive conversations, because of a lot of the identities we hold, the traumas we hold, whatever it may be that we're working through. So yeah, that's my long way of saying it ain't easy, but we gotta do it.
I love it. True words never been spoken. It's true. Collaboration can be, challenging. Like you said, it ain't easy, but we got to do it. I love how you put it. Do you have a set of key priorities that you're working on right now that you'd like to amplify?
I think in all the spaces that I'm in right now, I do have a lens of diversity, like holding space for diversity. Like I just told you my background, I'm half Indian, half French Canadian. So I don't represent diversity, but I understand some of it because I come from these two worlds that have had to learn how to live together, right? Within my own being and within my own family dynamic. And so it's taught me a lot. I grew up in Scarborough, very multicultural, taught me a lot. I'm learning about the history of this land. I'm learning a lot. And I'm realizing that we need to create space, right? For more voices to be at this table. And so in all those spaces, so I'm the first person of color on the board at Libro Credit Union. I'm trying to create a team of this new organization that is more representative of our community, and the program is more representative of our community. I'm trying to learn through the journey of reconciliation through this conservation project. Like, I think to me, one of the priorities is like creating space for diversity, and not just any type of diversity, really nuanced diversity. So when we talk about like indigenous, it's a one word for variety of people. We were Black or people of color. These are like these headers of like, chapters of like history and like identity, right? And so I think I'm just trying to figure out how to do more of that. And I think within that space, I'm spiritually connected to the earth, if you will. I align my spirituality with like all of creation, all the land, nature, if you will, the great mystery, God, how you want to frame it. And so I want to make sure that also that I'm tuned into that feeling for myself as I do the work. So that's maybe more of an internal journey for me as a priority to maintain that connection. But I think within the sphere of like the work itself, diversity, creating more space for people, people don't know they're invited. People don't know they're invited because sometimes they're not invited. And so my job has actually been to invite people into spaces that haven't been invited. And I just say, you know what, just come on in. And that's part of the work sometimes right now. It's like I'm just letting people in the door that aren't on the guest list. And then when they come in the guest list, honestly, they usually are allowed to stay, and then that creates more space, more perspective for the work that we're doing.
Yeah, that's remarkable and very necessary. It's a unique way of looking at that, welcoming people to the table that need to be there and don't realize that they are welcome because they never felt that before. So definitely appreciate you highlighting that. What is your ultimate goal, or what does success look like for you and your colleagues?
Oh man, wow. Okay, I'll tell you what my version of success looks like right now. And I don't know if there's another project that I work on. It's called Journeyland. And honestly, I grew up in the city. I grew up in the suburbs. I told you about my connection with the land. I honestly want, and this is like a dream I think many people have over time, and it usually dies because it doesn't work because people can't collaborate. But essentially, it's like, can we collectively buy some land And I had the opportunity to live in London, Ontario, which is different than Toronto. In Toronto, there's no land outside of there's nowhere. It's just cities on cities on cities. But in London, Ontario, there's land outside of the city. And the dream success for me right now is like wanting to buy that land and collectively own that land with a group of people and steward that land for from a generational perspective, not from like a development perspective, and hold space. And so success to me, as I have this hair, and it's not like a style choice, it's actually like a contract that I created with myself in 2017. And I told myself I'd cut my hair once I fulfill that vision, that success. And I only recently had a glimpse of it. And I think it's when we buy that land collectively, I might cut the hair. So that's maybe what success for me looks like right now.
I love it. So it's a bit of a motivation for you.
Yeah, and try to put all those ideas into one project. Like it's connection with the land, it's collective, power and money and going into that project. It's creating space for learning about this place and diversity. Like I feel like it's not perfect, but it encompasses all those things that I have to kind of separate myself in the community in order to do that work. It holds more of that together for me. So that's probably why I'm attracted to that idea.
That's good. Well, that's great. I really appreciate all your responses. Do you have any closing thoughts or calls to action for the community?
Yeah, I just don't be afraid to be yourself, I guess, is the classic one. I have children, I have to tell them all the time. And, as we go along this journey, we learn how to, for myself, like I learned how to make a tie and tie a shirt and do different things. And like, I don't do that anymore because I'm trying to understand who I am, how I want to show up. So, and that's allowed me to create space for other people to show up in that way as well. And people have done that for me. And so it's a gift that we get to, give back. So I think my greatest advice is just try and be yourself. And then, as I mentioned, like listen with love, speak with courage, and just be present with respect. Those are the three kind of values I'm trying to work through: love, courage, and respect right now. So those are my words of advice.
Yeah. Again, I love the word choice, very impactful. We really appreciate your time and the remarkable work that you're doing. So thank you so much for your leadership.
Yeah, and one last thing, don't be afraid to heal. Don't be afraid to heal.
Take the time necessary to heal.
We got some healing to do, don't we? I think so. So right?
I think everyone definitely has some shadow work to be done. So that's definitely a good call to action for the community.
Yeah, because when we show up in the best way we can, it affects other people around us, right? And so, yeah,
most definitely does. That's great. Well, thank you for sharing. Very insightful. And we just want to close off the way we began the interview by acknowledging the original stewards of the various lands that we are on, as well as our ancestors and those who toiled without compassion or compensation. We also want to acknowledge all of our elders and the various community stewards that continue to be those that we can build and share and learn with for our collective liberation. So I want to thank you once again, Andre, for taking the time to be here, and to all of our viewers and listeners for tuning in.
Thank you so much.